Good afternoon. We're back and with a new game this time, Marvel Champions. In this video I'm going to be teaching how to play, and it'll serve as an introduction to my Marvel Champions content. This game is similar in some aspects, many aspects, to Lord of the Rings LCG. So if you have followed my Lord of the Rings LCG content and have never played Marvel Champions before but are interested in it, it will be a gentle transition. In some ways, it seems like a simpler or easier game than Lord of the Rings LCG. More accessible, I would say, and more balanced for solo play. Lord of the Rings LCG at times was wildly imbalanced. For solo play, that's not to say it's an easy game or anything like that. I found the core set bosses to be quite challenging at times, and they ramp up in difficulty according to what kind of challenge you want to take on, which I really like. So I've enjoyed the game quite a bit so far, and we'll go through this introductory boss fight, and I will give some lessons in the mechanics of the game. As opposed to the 3-hero format of Lord of the Rings LCG, we play as one hero, in this case Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And we have a deck of 40 cards. The deck building in this game is a little bit more limited than Lord of the Rings LCG. There are 15 cards with each hero that must be included in the deck. They are unique to that hero. So Peter Parker has 15 cards in the deck, which are only seen in Spider-Man decks, and they have to be included. We have no choice about that when we're building a deck. They are these cards with the red background: Backflip, Spider Sense, Swinging Web Kick, Aunt May. Then there are 25 to 35 other slots you may fill with either basic cards, which have these gray border, or cards that are either themed around justice, leadership, aggression, or protection. In this case, I have chosen justice. These are these yellow cards, and so the remaining 25 slots, this is a 40 slot deck, they come from either the basic card set or the justice card set. The justice card set is focused around removing threat from the quest, which is very similar to Lord of the Rings LCG in some ways. So we'll get started, and I will give instructions on how to play as we go along. We'll get these decks shuffled up. With Spider-Man, Peter Parker, with your hero, you always start on their alter ego side. And with Peter Parker, I draw 6 cards. I know that because you can see in the bottom left corner of the card it says hand size 6. I can mulligan. I can discard as many of these cards as I would like and draw new ones. Generally, early on, my opinion is that looking for the core cards for the hero that are permanent effects, or at least semi-permanent, is the way to go. I did not draw any of those. Webbed up is a temporary condition. You can use it to stun an enemy. It's good, but it's expensive. Spider Tracker is only able to be played when a minion is on the table, which we don't have any, so I'm going to mulligan this entire hand. I don't like it that much. And the mulligan cards get discarded. Aunt May is a great card to get early. Web Shooter is a great card. This generates resources, so I'm much happier with this hand. To get started, now is when we will play our cards. So I will use Peter Parker's ability to generate a resource. Now you can see in the upper left corner of the cards, the number is their cost. And the way that you pay for cards is by discarding other cards. You can see in the bottom left corner of the card, this card has a fist, this card has I don't know what that is. This card has a lightning bolt, 2 lightning bolts, 1 lightning bolt, 1 lightning bolt. that is the number of resources the card generates when you discard them. So if I want to play Web Shooter, I need to discard cards amounting to 1 resource. So I will discard Great Responsibility, which will pay the 1 resource cost for the Web Shooter. It enters play with 3 web counters. Each web counter generates 1 resource, so I generate 3 resources overall by paying 1 resource for this Web Shooter, but just 1 resource per round. It's not an instant accelerator, but I will use it this round. I will spend 1 of these tokens and use the resource to play Aunt May, who costs 1. She's very good for helping Peter Parker to recover damage. Spider-Man overall is a defense-oriented hero, I would say. I don't really have a lot that I want to play otherwise. I guess I'll get out Interrogation Room. I'll pay for that using For Justice, which I don't need at the moment. After you defeat a minion, exhaust Interrogation Room, remove 1 threat from a scheme. Now, you can flip between your alter ego and your hero persona once per round. I will flip over to Spider-Man now, and I will use his action to attack Rhino for 2 damage. You can see his stats: 2 attack, 3 defense, and 1 thwart. Thwart I will go over later, but it is very similar to, what was it called, Willpower in Lord of the Rings LCG. Anyway, we're attacking Rhino for 2, so that drops him down to 12 hit points for this phase. And then at the end of the round, we ready the cards and draw. We draw first, and we draw up to the hand size. Since I'm now on Spider-Man, my hand size is 5 instead of Peter Parker, which is 6. I may also choose to discard any number of cards that I don't want in my hand. I would like to keep energy. It generates 2 resources, which is hard to come by. So I will draw 4 more cards. And then I ready up all my cards, and that is the end of the player turn. In terms of when it is your turn, performing actions, you can perform the actions in any order that you would like. So there's no need to attack first and then play cards, or play cards and then attack, or flip your hero and then etc. etc. You can perform the actions in any order that you would like. And the order can be relevant sometimes, so that gives you flexibility, which I do like. That's something about the game that I like. So once the player phase is over, we move on to the villain phase. The villain first places threat on the scheme. You can see on the card in the bottom toward the middle, it says +1, and then it has a little player icon. That means +1 threat per player during this phase. So this quest gets 1 threat. You can see in the upper left corner it says 7 per player. That means if this quest gets to 7 threat, the stage will be completed. Some quests have multiple stages. This does not. This says if this stage is completed, the players lose the game. So we cannot get to 7 threat. And that brings us to thwart. Instead of using Spider-Man to attack, I could have in my turn, if there was any threat on the scheme, I could have used him to thwart. He thwarts for 1, so if I had exhausted him to thwart, I would then remove 1 threat from the quest, which would take Rhino 1 threat away from completing his objective and winning the game, which would cause us, the player, to lose the game. After the threat is placed on the main scheme, the villain will activate once per player. If you are on your hero side, the villain will attack you using his attack. If we were on our alter ego side, the villain would scheme, where he would add 1 threat for each of his scheme value to the quest. So there's a balance between managing how much threat is on the quest and managing how much hit points you have in your health pool. Spider-Man starts with 10 hit points, which you can see on the bottom of the card next to hand size. Since we are in our hero form, Rhino will attack. He will get a boost card which is similar to the shadow card mechanic from Lord of the Rings. The boost card will add something to his attack. He currently attacks for 2 base. You can see in the bottom right corner of the card a red triangle. 1 red triangle means he will add 1 attack to his attack. I did not declare an attacker for this attack because it would require me to exhaust Spider-Man, and I want to save his action for later. So I will take the damage undefended. Rhino attacks for 2 plus the 1 triangle is an attack for 3. That will lower my HP by 3. After the attack, we get 1 encounter card per player. Again, similar to Lord of the Rings LCG. This encounter card says, attached to Rhino. When Rhino attacks, the attack gains overkill. Excess damage to an ally from this attack is dealt to that ally's controller. At the end of this attack, discard charge. It also gives him +3 attack, so his next attack will be for 5. And I can't use an ally to chump block because it will... This particular attack will have overkill. Typically you can use an ally to chump block, but not when he's got charge on him. So that's the end of the villain's turn. If this were a multiplayer game, I would pass the first player token, and that is the end of the first round. So we're back to the hero phase. What do I want to do here? I'm set up okay to deal with the charge because I have this card backflip. When you would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent all that damage. So I don't mind just eating the charge attack to the face because I can simply backflip out of the way. I will spend this energy card, or discard this energy card to generate 2 resources. And I will use Web Shooter to generate 1 resource, and I will play Helicarrier for 3. It's another acceleration card which generates resources each turn. And then what do I want to do here? Do I want to play Surveillance Team? I would have to discard Mockingbird to do it. Mockingbird's pretty good. Surveillance Team, do I need that? Does help with threat management, and I don't have very good threat management since Spider-Man only thwarts for 1. Interrogation Room is only useful if minions come on the table, and this boss doesn't have a lot of minions. So I actually think I will discard Mockingbird and exhaust Helicarrier to pay for Surveillance Team. And then I will exhaust Surveillance Team and use one of its tokens to lower threat from the main scheme by 1. Then I will use Spider-Man to attack the boss for 2. I will draw up to my hand size, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I will ready my cards, and we're on to the villain's turn. The villain will attack me for 5 plus a boost card. You can see in the bottom right no triangles, so that adds none to the attack. So it would deal 5 damage, but I'm going to backflip, which costs 0. It's one of Spider-Man's strengths, his defensive abilities. His defense of 3 is quite high, and he has this nifty backflip. So, at the end of this attack, discard charge, so he got his +3, he did no damage. And now we get our encounter card. When revealed, the villain schemes, so he schemes for 1. I forgot to add 1 threat to the quest at the beginning of this villain phase. I'll do that now, and now he's going to scheme for 1 plus a boost card, which is 1. So he schemes for 2. And that is the end of the villain phase and the end of the round. So on to the hero phase. You can get out another Surveillance Team. Probably should have used Emergency when the villain schemed just now. Let's see. I'd like to get a little bit more set up before I put Rhino into phase 2. I could swinging web kick him and attack him for 2, and that would get him into phase 2 right away. I'll discard strength to add 2 resources. You might wonder, does it matter whether the resource, what type of resource the resource is? So those are 2 fist resources, and they are different, and it does matter sometimes. But if it does matter, it's going to specify it in the text of the card. So generally it doesn't matter, but there are some specific situations where it does. Strength, we're going to discard to generate 2 resources. Play surveillance team, and I will use both of these surveillance teams, 1 resource from each, to drop threat by 2. Now, do I actually need to use strength to do that? I guess I will. That's interesting. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll save the web shooter, and I'll just leave helicarrier unused. We'll go ahead and attack for 2, and then we'll draw 3 up to the hand size. Black Cat is probably the best card in the Spider-Man set. And then we'll ready our cards and move on to the villain phase. He's going to attack Spider-Man. Once again, I will take the damage undefended, I think. Well, do I want to? Alright, we'll declare an attack. So here, Spider-Man's ability I've been totally forgetting. I should have been using this. When the villain initiates an attack against you, draw 1 card. Did not do that for the first 2 rounds. Mistake, but here I will. Draw 1 card. And the villain will attack, so he gets a boost card. The boost is 1, so he attacks for 3. That does not get through Spider-Man's defense of 3. So no damage, and then we get an encounter card, also 1 threat, which should have happened at the beginning of the villain phase. An encounter card, when revealed, give Rhino a tough status card. A tough status card simply absorbs damage. The next time you deal damage to the boss, any amount of damage, it consumes the tough status card. So you generally want to ping that. Just deal 1 damage to the boss and it will remove the tough, or 2 damage, or whatever you can do to remove the tough. And then you just don't want to like swinging web kick, because none of the 8 damage will get through. It'll just consume the tough card. That concludes the villain phase. We do not ready our cards at the beginning of the at the end of the villain phase, so we're going to enter into the player phase with Spider-Man exhausted. We're going to go ahead and use the surveillance teams to reduce threat on the main quest. This is what Justice is very good at, is dealing with threat. We're going to definitely get out Black Cat. I'll exhaust Helicarrier to help pay for that. And I'll discard this Spider Tracker to generate the second resource. So out comes Black Cat. Now with allies are generally much more temporary than they were in Lord of the Rings LCG. You can see Black Cat has 1 thwart and 1 attack. You can see that underneath Black Cat's thwart is a star. That indicates that each time you use her to thwart, you have to deal 1 damage to her. So you can only use her to thwart twice before she dies, because she has 2 HP, as you can see by the circled orange 2. Now underneath her attack, there is no star, which means you can attack with her for 1 every round and she will never die. That is actually quite rare for an ally. I think among the core set allies, she's the only one that can do that. Attack repeatedly and never die. She has a forced response. After you play Black Cat, discard the top 2 cards of your hand. Add each card with a printed little circles resource discarded this way to your hand. So this is a rare case in which the resource type does matter. So discard the top 2 cards, and if there are any of those resource types, I would get to draw them. There are not, unfortunately. Don't really have the resources to play Avengers Mansion. It's a good card that generates card draw. It's also an expensive card, and I find I rarely have the resources for it. I could pay for it with Web Shooter for Justice, Emergency, and Swinging Web Kick if I wanted to. I don't really want to, because I want that Swinging Web Kick. which I'm going to use in just a moment. First, I'm going to use Black Cat's action to ping the status tough card off of Rhino. And then I'm going to discard these 3 cards in my hand to play the Swinging Web Kick, which deals 8 damage to an enemy. That will drop Rhino all the way down to 0. And we're on to Phase 2. Phase 2, when revealed, search the encounter deck and discard pile for the Break-In and Taken side scheme and reveal it. And Phase 2 has 15 HP. It is the final phase on standard difficulty. Break-In and Taken is a side scheme. You have to deal with the 3 threat that start on the side scheme. You can see the 2 on the bottom indicates it starts with 2, and then it has a when revealed, place an additional 1 threat here. And it has a hazard icon, which means you deal 1 encounter card plus 1 encounter card during the villain phase. So instead of 1 encounter card, you get 2 encounter cards for as long as this side scheme is on the table. Once you deal with its 3 threat, it will be removed from the table. We will now draw up to our hand size. I don't think I want to flip to Spider-Man's alter ego here. Yeah, I think I'll stay in Spider-Man. So we'll draw the 5 cards. And we'll ready up. And we're on to the villain phase. He will attack for 3. First, we need to do the threat. 1 threat on the main quest. He will attack Spider-Man for 3. I will... Well, I have 4 Justice to deal with this side quest. We will get an extra encounter card this round. So I will have Spider-Man defend this attack. I will draw a card when the villain initiates his attack. He will get his boost card, so he's attacking for 3 plus 1. Red triangle is a attack for 4, which means drops Spider-Man's HP by 1 as Spider-Man has 3 defense. On to the encounter phase. And we get 2 encounter cards. The first one, Shadow of the Past, is a big one. When revealed, reveal your set-aside Nemesis minion and put it into play engaged with you. Reveal your set-aside Nemesis side scheme and put it into play. There's only one of these in the villain deck. You kind of generally hope that it doesn't come up or that you have a card to deal with it if it does. I do not, and it did come up. So we get our side scheme, which is Highway Robbery. When revealed, each player places a random card from their hand face down here. Maybe I'm not supposed to see which card it is. So, let's see. Is there a good way to do this? There may not be. We'll just pick a number 1 to 6. 3. Okay. So, there it goes. I mean, I guess you're always going to know which card you lost because you knew what your hand was before and after, so probably not necessary to do that. When defeated, return each face-down card here to its owner's hand. It starts with 3. And it has a plus and the little house icon, which means acceleration, which means that 1 additional threat will be placed on the main scheme each round. And we also have our Nemesis minion put into play engaged with me. The Nemesis minion is Vulture. After this minion engages your hero, it attacks. I am going to face tank that attack, which is a little bit risky with 6 HP, but I don't really want to have Black Cat tank it, so the boost card is a 1, so he attacks for 4. Drops us down to 2 HP. And in addition, we shuffle the rest of the Nemesis encounter deck into the encounter set. So let's... I don't know if there's an easy way to do that. Just do it this way. So that concludes this treachery card, which is a pretty big one. And then we have one more additional encounter card because of the break-in and take-inside scheme to resolve, and that card will be hard to keep down. Rhino heals 4 damage. If no damage was healed this way, the card gains Surge. He cannot heal, he's already at full health, so Surge just means you deal another encounter card. And that is the villain, and each minion engaged with you attacks you, which is going to kill me. Because Black Cat can tank 1 attack. But Spider-Man can't tank the other, he's only at 2 HP. So that sucks. I don't know if there's anything that I could have done differently or if I just got unlucky. But as you can tell, this is the very first quest in the game, and it's on standard difficulty. I did include the high difficulty modular set, but I don't think that came into play this round. It just flat out lost. So after I talked about how this is an easier game than Lord of the Rings LCG, then I go ahead and lose on the standard difficulty, which doesn't really bother me. I found that happens from time to time when I'm playing solo. Even though I don't think I made any mistakes, though perhaps players watching may have some opinion about that. I mean, I don't think I made any bad plays. I probably made small mistakes. It's often the case. I think I managed to correct everything relatively quickly, but anyway, the purpose of this quest was to demonstrate the mechanics of the game. Probably the thing that I may have done wrong was to enter phase 2 too early, because the ideal strategy is to have a 4 justice in hand, enter phase 2, and then while it's still the player's turn, go ahead and use 4 justice to remove the break-in and take-inside scheme right away. And I did consider that, and I did take a risk by entering phase 2, knowing that I would take 2 encounter cards. If I'd only taken 1 encounter card, I would have been in kind of a rough spot with Vulture Highway Robbery on the table, but I think it could have been dealt with the help of Jessica Jones and Black Cat. I think it could have been dealt with. We could have used them to take out the Vulture, or use Jessica Jones along with Spider-Man to take out the Vulture, and then flip to Alter Ego and had Aunt May heal Spider-Man up, and we would have had the villain scheme for a turn. And I think we would have been just fine. It was that second encounter card that was really the killer. And the second encounter card was a risk. I didn't have to let it happen. For the sake of moving the quest along, I took the risk, and the risk did not pay off, and it killed me. So, anyway, not an easy game. I like the game a lot, though. And this video will serve as an introduction to the game's mechanics for any players who are unfamiliar with the game. In the future, I intend to play quests on expert difficulty, and I intend to have content for every hero in the game, though there are 43 of them, so that may be a bit ambitious, we'll see. But that is my intent, and thank you for watching.